Assalamualaikum teman-teman. Kali ini kita masih melanjutkan novel Laila Halaby Once in a Promised Land, focusing on the idea of FBI and car accident, part ketiga dari 4 bagian episode kali ini. Langsung aja kita lihat apa yang terjadi ini antara FBI sama car accident dan Muslim protagonis yang berasal dari Palestine and Jordan. So part 3 focusing on idea of the FBI and 9/11 novels, car accident, and also a working space where Jassim worked as water consultant. Yeah. So Laila Halaby's Once in a Promised Land question anti-Muslim racism by using domestic genre, including car accident involving the FBI, which has transformed from protecting U.S. citizens to becoming the instrument of U.S. government surveillance toward Muslim after the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Indeed, the omniscient narrator questions the role of the FBI, which is the leading of the Department of Justice in the US, but have to deal with the domestic sphere as they have a license to accuse the protagonist Jassim as a predator of 9/11, as the FBI asked Jassim, quote, "Did you ever meet any of the hijackers personally?" unquote. So in doing so, the FBI investigates and interrogates Jassim. The FBI investigates the car accident which involves Jassim. Instead of asking about the car accident, the FBI interrogates and accuses Jassim involves terrorism. So the narrator uses irreverent strategies by mocking the FBI agent who has to handle both Jassim's household and Jassim's accident car. So by accusing Jassim as a terrorist, the FBI seemingly has a right to eliminate Jassim from American belonging in Tucson, where Jassim and Salwa live. In this sense, this novel does much more than perpetuate U.S. trauma, as Gray argues in his book, but it uses U.S. domesticity and U.S. household as the character and the character household to question U.S. violence as anti-Muslim racism, which likely works to deconstruct Muslims by attaching them with terrorism. So as Gray in 2011 argues that what is notable about novels which, like Halaby's, have attempted to confront the dreadful events of 9/11 and its aftermath directly in the present of, and an emphasis on the preliminary stages of trauma, the sense of those events as a kind of historical and experiential basis, a yawning and possibly unbridgeable gap between before and after, unquote. In other words, Gray takes for granted that trauma is the most appropriate lens through which to read post-9/11 fiction. What he takes issue with is how the trauma is negotiated in the text themselves. Gray further argues that these 9/11 novels are limited and domestic in scope, with emphasis on the marital breakdown and familial conflict, and therefore cannot do justice to the larger issues raised by 9/11 and the subsequent invasion of Iraq and its aftermath. So arguably, to question Gray's argument that Halaby's novel merely perpetuates U.S. Domestic trauma, so I will try to show how this novel actually questioned anti-Muslim racism and U.S. Surveillance by utilizing those domestic genres. The investigation of Jassim and his car accident by the FBI represent how government surveillance destabilized the boundaries between the domestic sphere, national policy, and global politics. Thus, this reveals how anti-Muslim racism invades and policy both the U.S. domestic sphere and Americans' household. We will check another slide. Yeah. So the FBI and car accident. So in order to question the FBI roles, the amnesia narrator also described Jassim as playing with the acronym FBI to instead spell F FIB, bukan Fakultas Ilmu Budaya ya. FIB, which means lie. Indeed, the FBI makes up a story by using Jassim car accident, which kills Evan. Evan is a white boy, American boy, who hates all Arab, who hates all Muslim, and wants to kill all of them. Thus, this excerpt implies that the real reason why the FBI interrogates Jassim is that they have an ulterior motive to persecute U.S. Muslim, as the agent interrogates Jassim, quote, "Why on earth was the FBI getting involved in a car accident?" unquote. In doing so, the omniscient narrator questioned the FBI's task or role, which should be focused on a criminal investigation instead of the car accident. However, because the car accident involved an Arab or a Muslim, which is Jassim, this investigation is crucial in the highest U.S. institution, as U.S. Muslims need to be observed and investigated, especially after the U.S. invasion of Iraq. So in this sense, this novel not only use domestic issues as the majority themes in 9/11 novels, as Gray argues in his book, but importantly, this novel can undermine the authority of U.S. higher officer in treating Arab or Muslim as foreigners or the enemy within, as Peter Murray and Amina Yakin argue that the category of Muslim as an object of discourse is produced by representation and agenda as they collide with the experience and concern of the transnational body of believers, unquote. So both More and Yakin investigated movies and television between 1960 to 2010. So Muslim characters are often represented as difference, which is articulated through metonymy. Muslim women wear the hijab, men appear bearded, praying, or both, unquote. So it can be argued that because of this misrepresentation, Lalaby's protagonist Jassim, who looks like an Arab and Muslim, is accused of being involved with terrorism. Indeed, we can see that Jassim co-workers, we can move to the next slide. Yeah, the FBI and working space where Jassim worked as water consultants. So Jassim co-workers such as Anita, Bella, Lisa, and Corey report Jassim to the FBI, as Bella is depicted as having Christian right-wing beliefs to represent anti-Muslim racism. So by using this conservative perspective, the narrator depicts Bella as a co-worker who is always blind to Jassim's good personality, who always help her to change the printer, although he is an engineer. Indeed, Bella perceives the protagonist, or Jassim, with prejudice and betrays him by informing the FBI through her notebook on Jassim because he is an Arab, he is a Muslim, and he has an access to the city's water. So by using the FBI as a more right-wing entity, the criticism of this novel moved toward racial politics, and thus this novel explores the intersection between race, religion, and politics. So this intersection has created a conspiracy between Anglo-American characters, in this case Bella, and the FBI agent who keeps spying Jassim. In this sense, Halaby's story reveals how the U.S. Muslim identity has been swiftly transformed from racial religious identity to become a racial political identity. Thus, this novel complicates domestic religious affairs, which have been transformed into political national problem by involving the FBI agent and with the Christian right-wing politics. And yeah, let's see the last two slide. So in the novel, the FBI also conflates racial issue with the economic problem. So this the connected to economy or money, we can see that how Halaby conflates racial issue with economy or money to connect domesticity and globalization. We can see, for example, in one scene, page 5, when Salwa sent about $14,000 to help her family in her homeland of Jordan, the FBI accuses Salwa and Jassim of funding terrorists. Indeed, money is a symbol of how race and economics work together to marginalize Muslims who are seemingly not allowed to be rich and help their family, but are merely assumed to have link to terrorism. Aduh, kasihan banget ya, sebagai Muslim dituduh-tuduh teroris, ngapa-ngapain dituduh teroris. Ya, kita lanjut aja. So the FBI likely denies the right to universal human emotions such as familial love and care for Muslims. So this is why it is important to perceive Muslims, especially after U.S. invasion of Iraq, as simply human beings who need to love and to be loved by their families and communities. To question these limited views of Muslims in the U.S., this novel links the smallest coins of U.S. currency with the largest U.S. institution, the FBI. For example, in one scene, when Jassim meets Jen James for the first time, he described, quote, "She looked to be her 30s, wore very high heels, easily 3.5 inches, with the tip of the heel tapering to the size of a nickel. Why would an FBI agent wear shoes that were so unstable? On her hip sat a pager and a telephone, and on her right hip sat a gun," unquote. So by having a gun, the FBI agent can represent a hunter or an officer who wants to hunt her target. Agent James also wears very high heels which taper to the size of the nickel, representing money or economy and also superpower. It can be argued that Halaby's novel implies the instability of the American economy, as what David Harvey in 2005 has termed the U.S. imperial capitalism economic imperative, such as the oil mafia or the oil demand, have, of course, been central to American response to the 9/11 attacks. In doing so, Harvey argues that A narrow conspiracy thesis rests on the idea that the government in Washington is nothing more than an oil mafia that has absorbed the public domain. So the desire of the US government and its politicians to the Arab oil may lead them to provoke the idea of war and terror and Islamophobia, which function as a scapegoat to stabilize its economy and politics. In addition, in this novel, the FBI agent is depicted as wearing the high heel as the agent feels unstable, representing the US economy and political instability. So this depiction also works to emphasize how the FBI agent is actually unstable and not sure what she's doing by investigating Jassim, but just because they have a report from Bella claiming Jassim has an access to city water and possibly wants to poison the water. Kasihan dituduh meracuni itu air. So Jassim can be associated with terrorists. In this sense, this tech utilizes domestic household and small entities to point out larger debates in global conflicts, including the conflicts of oil mafia and to cover or to hide the problem of U.S. domestic economics and politics. So we will continue the next part, the last part or part 4, focusing on the idea or the metaphor of terrorist hunting license. So please stay tuned and thank you and see you next video. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.